So I was the project manager on what was called the Orbiting Carbon Observatory #2 project, so OCO2 for short. It's been operating in space now for a little over 3 years. But during the development life cycle, we actually found that we needed to be quite flexible. About midway through the development life cycle, they changed launch vehicles on us. And so our team really had to scramble to figure out what the technical changes needed to be, how to accommodate the schedule changes. But all in all, the team did an outstanding job in being flexible and being able to accommodate not just a brand new launch vehicle, but also minimizing the schedule impact associated with that. Now, currently, I'm the Orbiting Carbon Observatory #3 project manager. So what we've done is we've taken the FlightSpare instrument from OCO2, and we're in the process now of adapting it for use on the International Space Station. It's an exciting opportunity for us because it's going to allow us to take data at different times of the day because of the ISS precessing orbit, and we also have an agile pointing mirror assembly. So it's going to give us a great opportunity to look at many different spots on the globe, many different times each day. So about 2 or 3 years ago, we found ourselves in an unenviable position of being canceled. So here we were as a project team, and I think it was early 2014, working very hard, building hardware, writing software, and lo and behold, the OCO3 project was no longer in the president's budget. And we had to figure out what to do. So I immediately had to make sure that whatever resources we had, we try to preserve them to the best of our ability and try to figure out how best to utilize those resources. Should we go ahead and procure additional hardware or preserve those resources to maintain the core team? Because in the end, as a project manager, I've learned throughout the years that your greatest asset are your people. The people working together as a project team. Now, to make a long story short, this team that we've developed over the years stuck together, and because of the dedication and commitment by all involved, we weathered the storm, and the project was reinstated about 2 years later. And we've been working very hard now, making sure that we can complete what we call the payload integration and test process. But talk about a test of being flexible that really tested not only myself, but the entire team. It really allowed us to focus on our commitment, not just to ourselves, but also onto the success of the mission. And hopefully we don't have to deal with that in the future, but that was probably a true test of commitment and will of the project team. And I had to provide a lot of leadership, but really it was the testimony of the commitment by each of the team members that really provided the flexibility that the project really needed. And we were able to show the project sponsors that we were up to the challenges. So being able to weather that storm and being able to deal with whatever cards were dealt and hoping for the best, and it served the project well. So we're continuing to move forward in light speed. Okay, as a project manager, you're not only responsible for managing the resources, but also providing leadership to the entire team. And being dealt the set of cards that we were dealt in early 2014 was a position that no manager really wishes themselves to be in. But that was an opportunity, not just a challenge, but definitely an opportunity for me to be able to show the leadership skills that were required. So, for example, I consider myself an eternal optimist. I'm always looking at the glass as half full rather than half empty. And I also consider myself a dedicated earth scientist. And so in talking with the team members, I really wanted to instill kind of a sense of ownership. You know, everything we were doing was basically for improving our understanding of climate change process, better understanding the carbon cycle, and people saw not just doing the work as a job, but really being able to fulfill a mission that was going to benefit not just the project team, the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or NASA, but the entire population of the world. So for me, again, being placed in a very challenging position also presented a tremendous opportunity to really instill confidence and a stick-to-itive nature and a sense of commitment. And I understand in my position that leadership really starts from the top. And being able to show on a daily basis that you're committed, you show up on time, you do what it takes for as long as it takes to get the job done, people see that. And with all modesty aside, people want those kind of attributes in a leader because people follow. They want surety. They're looking for surety where there's a lot of uncertainty. And they look to the project manager, the leader, to be able to instill that confidence that, look, in the end, we'll be able to weather the storm and we'll provide a successful mission. So, Raymond, that's an interesting question you ask. What do project managers tend to get wrong about being flexible? So most project managers have a background in engineering. So we're all trained basically to solve problems, to develop designs. And I think that's a strength, being an engineer, but it also can be a weakness to a project manager unless they truly understand what it is. So what I'm trying to say is that a project manager really needs to focus on the requirements. What is really being asked of a particular project? Here are the scientific goals. Here are the requirements. And not be so fixated on a particular implementation or a particular design. And that's where I feel a lot of project managers, because of their background, their training in engineering, they focus on a specific implementation or a specific design rather than taking a step back and saying, what is the real commitment that I've made to my upper management at the laboratory or to NASA headquarters? Because if you take a step back, maybe there's a better way. Maybe it's a shorter schedule, or maybe a more cost-effective implementation, a better mousetrap design, if you will. And so you really have to be careful as a leader to be able to understand the difference between a requirement versus a specific implementation or a design. Because once you start grasping that, real nature that here's what's really being asked of me, not what is being asked of me, I think it gives you the flexibility then to figure out which is the right path to success. So that's a great question, Raymond. How did I learn to be flexible as a project manager? As I mentioned before, most project managers have training in engineering or science. I took it upon myself to get some additional training. So I have an executive engineering management certificate on top of my technical degrees. So that formal training helped me become a better project manager. But in the end, I would say that like many things in life, and a lot of the work that we do, it really is all about on-the-job training and the school of hard knocks. And there's a saying that goes, good judgment comes from experience, experience comes from bad judgment. So experience has a lot that plays into this. So you really have to take the good experiences and the bad experiences in order to be flexible. Now, So OCO3 is my fourth project that I've been honored to be able to manage at NASA, and because of the situation that we were in on OCO3, having a project canceled on us and then to be only reinstated 2 years later, I really need to make sure that the project team stayed together. And it was only because of my experience on previous projects that allowed me to be flexible. I pointed out earlier, not being so focused on implementation, but taking a step back and seeing what was required of us. What are the primary objectives? And then finding the best path forward. So for me, the bottom line is formal education or training is great, and that supplements the good experiences and the not so good experiences that you have during your career.